What's going on, everyone? Today we're going to learn how to make some rock star charts that you can impress your boss with, you can impress your teacher. Basically, instead of making the traditional terrible Excel charts that I see every day at work, we're going to make some good charts. And good charts don't just mean pretty charts. Good charts mean informative charts. They're descriptive. They're not cluttered. The units make sense. They're properly labeled. There's not too much data, but there's enough data to show a relationship. Basically, what we're going to be doing in this video is taking these two terrible charts and making them into one nice chart that has both sets of data, it's descriptive, it's useful, and it tells a story. And that's what we want to do with every chart that we make. And I'll tell you, I work in the capital markets, one of the biggest banks in the world, and I work in Excel every day. And I still, from my colleagues, from the people who work for me, and for the people that I work for, still see charts today like the ones that are on your screen right now. And honestly, it's embarrassing. So what we're going to do is basically just convert one of these charts into the chart that I just showed you a second ago. And we're going to talk about each step of the way and why we're doing it and how we're doing it. I'm going to keep it pretty basic, but we're just going to start cleaning up. So obviously, if you don't know how to make a chart in Excel, you just you can select your data. You can either take the data labels or just take the entire data set and insert it. And, we'll do it as a line graph. So I'm going to delete these old charts. We're just going to work off this one because first of all, we want to create a relationship between these two data points. One is sales data and one is quantity, so units sold. So the amount that we sold and the units sold. Now you can see that it didn't really work. I have a red line on the bottom, it's too low, and the blue line is too high, and because the units are so different, the magnitude makes it look like the red line is flat, which it actually isn't. So what we're going to do is press Control 1, and that brings up our data series axis. So that was Control 1. You can do it with the right mouse button as well. It can be a little hard to select these little guys, but basically just right-click it, Format Data Series, and hopefully you can see that okay. What we're going to do is we're going to swap it over from the primary axis, which is your traditional y-axis, and we're going to add a secondary axis. So now we have a y-axis on the left, explaining the sales data, and a y-axis on the right, explaining the quantity data. So that's our first step. Now, the second step, and this one's fully optional, but I absolutely hate these little lines. Now, again, we can do the Control 1 to pull up our menu, or we can right-click and select Edit. So one thing that you can do to make it a little nicer is just change the dash type over here. So that was line style, dash type. We'll just make it a dotted line. It actually just, it makes it a little less obvious. I think it actually cleans the chart up a lot. But my preference is actually to just remove it. I like to get rid of as much of the unnecessary lines as possible so that my viewer can just focus on what really matters. And for that same reason, we're going to do another right click. We're going to go Format Chart Area. We're going to go border color, and then we're going to go no line. And that's just going to take this little gray line along the edge of the chart away. We're not going to have that anymore. And that's perfect. That's what we really want. Actually, while I'm doing that one, I want to show you one more quite useful trick, especially if you're dropping charts into PowerPoints. Sometimes it's nice to have no fill on either the chart area within the chart or the entire chart background. So it's going to be two. One click within the chart area, data area, and one within the overall chart. And if we do no fill, you can actually see the background of my spreadsheet show up. So I can actually highlight around it, and you can imagine sometimes that would be useful. So the next piece we're going to do is there's a ton of white space here. And so obviously our menu location is not good, or sorry, our legend location. So we're going to go to the layout bar. Sorry, format, design, layout. Yeah, layout. Legend. We're going to drop down, take the legend drop down, and we're going to do an overlay. It can be nice to put it at the bottom. I'll show you that. The bottom's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, sometimes that's the optimal place to put it. I think in this case, I'm going to actually overlay it. I'll put it in the right, but really I'm just going to drag it around. Okay, so that's the first piece. The next piece is we want to label our data. Our x-axis on the bottom here is pretty self-explanatory, but the y-axes don't mean anything. And so we're going to do on the same layout menu, we're going to just add some axis titles. So you can see we have the primary and there's also the secondary. So we're going to need both. So first of all, we are going to put in, this is the vertical. So we're going to do a rotated title. I think it looks the best. You can see it pops up there. And now we're just going to type in, we're going to explain what it is. So this is our sales per team, and we're going to put in our unit. We want to put in a descriptive data as much as possible. We want to make it easy for our users. So we'll quickly do the second axis as well. So this is the secondary vertical axis, rotated title, and this one's going to be units sold. And it's fairly self-explanatory, but we're going to use the number sign. So it indicates that it's not thousands, it's not millions, it's just total number of units. And they must be some pretty expensive units, I gotta say. So the next piece, we know that this axis is units, and we know this one is dollars, but this one has far too many zeros. And because we put $M, we need to actually make this $M. We need to get rid of some of these zeros. So we're going to format the axis, right-click Format Axis, or click on it and press Ctrl+1 to bring up the Options panel. And we're going to use this Display Units on the Axis Options tab. And we're going to say millions. Now, because we have the $M here, we can actually get rid of this millions that got added on there. And the way we do that is we just unclick that box, and there you go. All right, so you can see we're starting to get a nice little chart here. Now, I think the next thing that we want to do is we're actually going to convert one of these axes over to a different chart type. We want to overlay. We want to show two different chart types. One's going to be a bar chart, and one's going to be a line chart, so that we can begin to see the relationship between the data. And we're going to do, let's do sales per team. We'll try this one. So we're going to go to the Design button in the Chart Tools tab, Design. We're going to change Chart tab, and we're going to make it a column chart. All right. So now what we want to do is, again, Ctrl+1 or right-click, Format Data Series. First thing I like to do is I like to close the gap. I like to get rid of white space in my charts. So we're going to make the gap width, that's the white space in between each of these bars, 50%. 30% is okay too. Now we're going to design the background a little bit. We're just going to use a light gray. We just want to step off the basic colors. The issue with the basic colors is everyone knows that you just did no work when you hand in a chart with the basic default Excel colors. Everyone's seen those a million times before, and it doesn't impress anyone. We're also going to put a border around our bars here, just a slightly darker gray, just to define them. Again, we're going to just switch the line color to slightly deep darker red. We're going to change the line style. We're going to use a dotted line as well. Okay, so our chart's starting to come along now. So the next thing I want to do is I want to sort this by something, basically. And I'm going to sort it by the quantity, I think. So we're going to go to select all of our data and hit the data tab, and then hit the sort button. And we get this menu here. And basically we're going to sort by the quantity. And we want to do smallest to largest, that's fine. Okay, so that way we've now got a line. Obviously that may not be what you want. I mean, we've now mixed up our teams. They're not in order anymore, but we now see which team has sold the least and which team has sold the most. And we can also see that even though this team 7 sold the least, they actually made the most money, so their dollars per sale is the highest. So we begin to get to see some interesting data points. The point of this chart isn't actually, I made up this data, so that's sort of irrelevant. But it's just to show how to describe data, essentially. Now, really the last thing that I want to do here is two things, really. We're going to add some data labels to this chart. So we can see that those now are a bit more descriptive. You can see how high they are. And we're also going to add, we're going to make the legend dynamic. So what it's going to be is sales per team. And I'm going to use the notation LHS, which means left-hand side. It's fairly standard. It depends on who you're submitting the chart to, whether or not they'll know what that is. And we're going to use units sold. So those are going to be our two data labels. So the first, what we're going to do is we're going to select the data, right-click the chart, select the data, and we're going to hit edit. And instead of this top piece, which says series name, which is currently linking up here, we're actually just going to delete that and we're going to drop it in here. There you go. And we're going to edit this and we're going to do it here. So those are now dynamic. If I delete one of these, it'll actually delete on the chart. We have a little bit more control. We can say this is vert x axis 1, and this one's 2. And I did a little misclick there. So that's about as far as I want to take you in this chart. What we've done is we've transitioned from basically two terrible charts to one useful chart that's well labeled, that's descriptive, that's not too cluttered, but it's also not too basic. And we want to take some of these approaches in all the charts that we're going to be working on in the future. If there's any charts in particular or tips and tricks that you'd like to see, slam those into the comments and I'll address them one by one. And make sure that you subscribe to the channel so you can become an Excel pro as well. Thanks for checking out the video.